Hello everyone! Today we're going to be taking a look at the Dyson DC27. This is a unique North American version, which was only sold for a couple years, and compared to other models from the time, is pretty uncommon. Today I'm going to go over giving the vacuum a tune-up and cleaning, and demonstrate how it works. Compared to the same vacuum sold in other countries, the US DC27 features a completely different cleaner head. Unlike the other version, this Dyson features 2 motors instead of 1, and a far more aggressive brush roll. It also features a cogged lifetime belt. The bristles on the brush roll are fairly stiff and stick out a good amount, so it grooms very well. Although this model is over a decade old, to this day, this remains one of the best cleaning Dysons for carpeting ever made. Now let's take out the brush roll. There's 3 tabs you unlock to remove the bottom plate. The brush roll then lifts out, and you have to walk the brush roll and end cap towards the center and off the belt. One nice thing they added to this model was a larger suction channel behind the belt area. It helps it distribute the suction across the entire base and gives dirt more room to get around the belt area. Despite the improvements on this one, that channel was clogged. And I think they always put the belt in the center to help with edge cleaning on both sides, which is very good on this model. Let's take a look at the filters. To remove the premotor filter, there's 2 buttons on the top to unlock the assembly, and then it lifts out. On this Dyson, the premotor filter is very high quality. Removing the filter from the cover, you can see where the dirt collects on the inside, and it was dusty and ready to be washed. With the premotor filter off the Dyson, you can then lift off this clear cover and get to the HEPA exhaust filter. The filter is black from carbon dust from the motor, which is perfectly normal. Both filters are washable, and you just have to make sure they're 100% dry before reinstalling them. Now I'm going to take apart the Cyclone pack so I can wash it out completely. First, you need to open the bin. When you open the bin, on the back it exposes a gray button, and you can press that to release the clear bin from the Cyclone assembly. Like all Dyson vacuums, on the inside here there's a perforated screen called a shroud, which you'll want to check often and clean as needed. The clear bin itself I'm going to wash out, let dry completely, and then polish the inside of it. The Cyclone is easy to take apart. To make it easier, I'll first remove the Cyclone exit on the bottom, and if you press down on it, it'll just snap off along with the O-ring. On the underside, you can see the built-up dirt where the Cyclone spit out the dust. This is normal, but taking this apart means you can wash all that old dirt out. Using a long T15 torque bit, there's 9 total screws on the top of the pack. I first removed the 6 screws around the outside of the pack. There's still one more hidden screw behind the red bracket that runs down the back, and to get to that hidden screw, you first need to remove the 2 screws on the top of the handle. Once the handle is loose, you can move that red bracket out of its guide and get to the final screw, and then after that, the top lifts off. On the inside, there's 7 more T15 screws that you need to remove. Once those are out, the Cyclone top lifts off. Underneath the Cyclone top, there's a very thin and fragile black foam gasket. I'm going to carefully remove the foam gasket from this white plastic piece, and you should take your time when doing so, because if the gasket tears, you'll have to replace it. The gasket itself I'm not going to wash, and instead carefully wipe clean. Now with everything apart, I can wash the Cyclones and shroud out, and they'll be able to dry completely before putting everything back together. And the last thing I'm going to do is separate the rubber gasket from the bottom of the Cyclone exit. Both of these parts will get washed as well. On the cleaner itself, I'm going to spray and wipe down the whole thing, but I am going to make sure I also hit these gaskets, get those nice and clean so that all the seals are working just like they should. After a few minutes of work, I've already built up a pretty good pile of parts here. The majority of these parts are going to be washed, just to get them as clean as possible, get all the dust off of them. A few parts here I won't be able to wash. I don't want to damage them. That includes the brush roll, that foam gasket, and I will probably just hand clean the wand because it has that whole shift over mechanism inside of it. There might be springs and stuff that I don't want any liquid to stay in there. So I'm probably just going to hand clean all of that, but I'm going to disinfect those parts as well. I'm pretty happy with this. I think that this is going to clean up nicely. You know, I mean, a lot of Dysons, their owners just destroy them, but this one, the lady took pretty good care of it, it seems. So I think we'll be able to get it working great and looking a lot better. Now it's time to clean it up. I first swept off the Dyson using my bench vacuum and a soft dusting brush. This alone made it look a lot better as the whole thing was covered in dust. I then swept out the brush roll housing and base and cleaned out the area where the belt rides. This belt was in good shape, but you'll want to check the belt for any missing teeth or cracks. Then using all-purpose cleaner, I cleaned out the nozzle area. While I was there, I removed the base hose, which just unsnaps from a collar. And I checked to make sure it was clear and it didn't have any tears, and it was fine. Once the nozzle was dry, I swept out any dirt I had kicked up, then wiped down the base of the cleaner again. Next, I used rubbing alcohol to get the paint scuffs off the vacuum. It works great, but you really want to be careful not to overuse alcohol, as it can dull or damage the finish. However, it works great at getting paint scuffs off of vacuums with minimal effort. The brush roll is thankfully in great shape, and all I did was wipe it off with alcohol, then clean the small amount of thread that was built up around it. The ends can be popped off and cleaned out, but you risk damaging them if you do so I'm glad this one's in great shape. Next, I polished out the nozzle using Mother's Mag and aluminum polish. It's a great plastic polish, and the product is actually polishing the plastic, so it delivers a long-lasting shine. Using a little elbow grease, I scrubbed the polish into the clear plastic, then wiped it out thoroughly with a clean towel. After that, I vacuumed off any dust left over from the process, and finally sprayed and wiped down the nozzle one last time to remove any residual polish. I then refitted the brush roll, which you loop around the belt, then walk back into place, lining up both end caps with the base. Then I put the bottom plate back and locked the 3 tabs. I polished the outside of the brush roll nozzle as well, and then moved on to the clear bin. Dirt basically sandblasts the inside of any Dyson bin, so they always get badly scratched and cloudy. After washing it, I sprayed and wiped it out one last time before I polished the inside and outside of the bin using Mother's Mag and aluminum polish. I ended up polishing the bin a couple times, and while still clouded afterwards, it made a decent difference. It would take a lot of work to get one of these perfect. Now I'm going to put the Cyclone pack back together. As I mentioned earlier, the only part in the pack I didn't wash was this thin, fragile foam gasket, as I didn't want it to fall apart. I'm going to carefully wipe it down with cleaner, then let it dry. Putting this back together is easy. The first thing I'm going to do is refit this gasket to the Cyclone assembly. It looks like it can go on anyway, but I'm going to double check. The gasket can go back in anyway, but I'd make sure it's not facing upside down. Once it's lined up, gently set the gasket back into place and take your time. Once the gasket is back into place, the Cyclone top can be fitted back onto the Cyclones. Like the gasket, this part is symmetrical and can go on any way. And once it's in place, you just refit the 7 silver T15 Torx screws. Okay, so now I can fit the top back onto the Cyclone assembly itself. It only goes on one way, and what you want to make sure is that this mechanism for emptying the bin lines up with the rest of that assembly, which is down here. When you put the top back on, you first want to reinstall the hidden screw behind the red bracket. You need to put this one in first before you can put the bracket back into its guide. At this point I checked to make sure the button was working okay, and it was. So I put the 2 handle screws back in, and then the remaining 6 screws that are around the outside of the Cyclone top. The last step with the Cyclone pack is to put the Cyclone exit back on. There are 3 tabs on the top of the Cyclone exit, and those line up with holes on the bottom of the shroud. Once they're lined up, just press down on the Cyclone top and you'll hear the tabs lock into place. The final step was to reinstall the rubber gasket on the bottom. Just line up all the grooves and make sure it's seated completely. That's it. Now that they're washed, I'm reinstalling the filters. They cleaned up well and worked fine, but unfortunately they had a permanent odor to them. After testing the vacuum, I decided to replace them. The previous owner used a ton of that carpet fresh powder, and I couldn't get the artificial smell out of them. A new set did the trick. The last thing I did was oil the noisy wheel axles and base spring. Now I do this, but you have to make sure you wipe away 100% of the excess oil, as it can damage your carpet. The Dyson is finished. Cosmetically, it's far from perfect, but cleaning out the nozzle and airways, washing out the filters and Cyclone pack, and cleaning out the brush roll has done the trick. Now it's going to work exactly like it should. The Dyson features two switches, one to power the vacuum and one to turn the brush roll on and off for cleaning hard flooring. To lower the handle, you just put your foot on either side of the nozzle and pull the handle back. Like many older Dysons, the front of the vacuum is very tall and bulky, and tools are required for cleaning under furniture and smaller areas. This is a full-size Dyson, and with the cord attached and tools on board, the DC27 weighs in at just under 20 pounds. It's not a lightweight vacuum by any means. The handle weight is just under 3.5 pounds, and it doesn't feel too heavy in the hands. Not a quiet machine, at 83.5 decibels, this older Dyson would not meet the current EU regulations of vacuums need to be under 80 decibels in noise. Even without a perfect seal, the suction gauge on the end of the wand reads at an incredible 110 inches of water lift. Unfortunately, the great suction leads to a critical flaw of this vacuum. The nozzle really likes to seal down to the floor, and the brush roll isn't aggressive enough to pull the vacuum along, so on lower carpet it can be unusable as it clamps down, or when you pull the machine back it skips around. Because of this, I couldn't do my red rug demo with this vacuum, but it works just fine on everyday plush carpeting. As I mentioned before, this is one of Dyson's best carpet cleaners. The brush roll grooms very well and does a good job of lifting out the dirt as well as sweeping the nap. As long as the carpeting isn't too short where the Dyson can seal down, it does a fantastic job. Now I'll try the Dyson out on hard floors. For this test, I only put down finer particles. Again, on this model Dyson, the nozzle really seals down to the floor. Anything larger will get snowplowed and pushed around. So in everyday use, you'd want to vacuum up all the larger stuff first with the hose and wand. One pass forward and back, that did a fantastic job. It didn't even snowplow anything. It just gobbled it all right up, and it's a clean sweep. So that's really impressive because a lot of uprights with the brush roll shut off don't do this well. Well, that did great. Now let's test out its ability to clean edges, corners, and right up to the baseboard.
So on hard floors, while the Dyson will push around larger objects better than pick them up, the pickup of finer, small particles is excellent. Now I'll show how you can use the tools. The two smaller tools on the left store on board the vacuum. The other two tools are extra options, but they're appropriate extra tools for this era Dyson, which is from 2009.
So I do like the hose setup on this Dyson. It's identical to the DC28, and it's very similar to the DC17. I still think the 17s is a little better, and I'll show you why. But it's the same principle. You just lift this cap here, and then you lift this wand up, and the wand disconnects. And then you have this nice long attachment hose and wand, and you've got a ton of reach. The hose is extremely long, so you can go right up a flight of stairs with it, which I really like. I've always liked that feature on uprights. And the wand disconnects right here, and you can hook up any of your attachments to the end of the hose here or to the end of the wand. So if you want the reach, you can have that, which is great for stairs and general dust or dusting up high. But when you're cleaning furniture or the car or a place where you don't want all this extra reach, you can hook up any tools right to this. And the only thing I don't like about this as much as the DC17 is that this hose does not swivel here. So if this gets all tangled up, see how it's kind of coiled up there? Sometimes when you put this back in, you may have to fix that first, but then you just push that back into place, and that's it. I always liked how easy it is on these.
My coffee table is pretty dusty, so I'll try out the Dyson Soft Dusting Brush first. This is a great general dusting tool. This is Dyson's first generation combo tool, which serves as both your onboard dusting brush and crevice tool. These have gotten better over the years, but I was never a huge fan of these original ones. They do the job, but I tend to prefer separate larger attachments for each task. Emptying the bin is easy. You just push the red button on top, and the dirt falls out the trap door on the bottom. On this model Dyson, hair does like to get caught up inside the bin, so you want to take the bin off occasionally and check the shroud. The shroud already has a decent amount stuck to it, so when needed, I'll just sweep it off with the dusting brush. Let's take a look at the filters. The premotor filter is the one you're going to have to worry about more often, and it's spotless. There's only a couple pieces of glitter on it after all that cleaning. Under normal use, you'd want to check and wash this filter a couple times a year. The HEPA filter still looks new, but over time it will discolor as it builds up with carbon dust from the motor. Both filters are washable as needed, which is a nice feature. So there you have it. This is the North American Dyson DC27, and it's a shame Dyson didn't make this machine longer. Aside from it sealing down too hard to low-pile carpeting, the performance of the machine is excellent. On standard plush carpeting, it does a great job, especially for a Dyson. The hard floor performance is excellent too, which was still fairly uncommon on uprights when this vacuum was new. I also like the hose and wand setup on this older Dyson, as it's very easy to use, offers great reach, and is easy to switch back and forth. Even though it's over a decade old, I would still consider the North American DC27 one of the best uprights Dyson's ever produced. It's too bad Dyson didn't make small improvements to this machine and continue to sell it for a long time. If you have any questions, feel free to ask, and as always, thank you for watching, and have a great day.